Okay, the discussion is Tochein. So how did we get to this point? How did we get here? Oh, we got very agriculturally busy. We planted and we sowed and we reaped and we harvested and we separated with the wind and then we separated with our hands. Yeah, Choresh and Zriya. And we did Zoreh and we watered and Zoreya and Kotzer and Borer. And we're all bored out. After 2 classes on it, I think we are too. Now we're left with a beautiful, yummy, scrumptious pile of wheat kernels. Or we are left with a pile of herbs in their original form with all the debris removed. What do we do with wheat in order to make it into bread? We grind it into flour. Okay, so we take a large particle, in this case pieces of wheat or herbs, right? Because they had the various little items. They had the Tochein, which was a blue dye, or the argamon, a purple dye, or Tochein, a red dye. Tochein, red dye. And they would crush it down into flour or into some kind of powder. That's basically what's going on over here. Okay? So that process of taking whole pieces and grinding them down into smaller, usable particles. I don't know how better than that. That is going to be the Av Malacha of Tochein. So Tochein means grinding. But we're going to include into that chopping, crushing, pulverizing. Anytime I take something bigger to make it smaller, not necessarily into powder form. Powder form is going to be a problem. But any form of crushing it down or making it to much smaller pieces is going to be the Av Malacha. Okay? Even mashing. To what degree are we talking about? So it has to be duck, duck. Duck, duck. What's duck, duck? Goose, goose. Stop it, Rabbi, you're killing me. No, seriously, you're killing me with terrible jokes. Duck, duck means very, very fine. What's weird and unusual is that there is no halachic definition given to us of how small that item has to become. For sure, turning it into powder, pulverizing it, grinding it, putting over a grinding machine or a cube grinder, all those things are going to be problematic. But we're going to include into this even cutting vegetables, according to many opinions, into very small pieces, right? Into chatichot katanot, even tiny little pieces is going to be a problem when it comes to this as well, okay? Even though a big vegetable needs to be chewed and a small vegetable needs to be chewed as well. So the difference may not create a new use for it. And that's really what we're looking for. It's not got a new use. Take a big tree and cut it up into sizable chunks. Now I can use the sizable chunks to burn on the fire, right? Or do something else with. That's a sizable chunk. That I hear has got a new use. Big vegetable to small vegetable, not so new, you know? Even so, we are going to try to be careful, make it very, very small, like Israeli salad, right, very small. That could be, according to many poskim, problematic, okay? So we're taking big pieces and making them into smaller pieces. There are going to be a number of exceptions to this rule, okay? We'll look at 4, it's probably a 5th as well, but let's have a look at it. Ein tochein ela b'gedulei karka. It's only considered to be tochein, grinding, with items that are grown from the ground. Okay? Wood would apply to this. Vegetables and fruit would apply to this. There's a question by meat. Is meat grown from the ground? So, it doesn't grow from the ground, but animals take their sustenance from the ground. So some actually even include meat or eggs as well. Okay? Some do include it, but really, technically, they're not part of it. We'll see that a little bit later. 2, Ein Tochein achar Tochein. It's not considered to be Tochein. By the way, you see the word Tochein in here, by the way? Tochein is ground down sesame, right? You cannot make Tochein on Shabbat. Ein Tochein achar Tochein. It's not considered to be Tochein once it's been Tocheined, which means once you have an item that was ground down, then was reconstituted into a solid, that item can be ground down again because ein tochein achar tochein. Can anyone think of an example? Then I know what I'm talking about.
Mashed potato.
Well, let's leave mashed potatoes for a second. Mashed potatoes is a little bit interesting because it's a cooked vegetable which gets very soft anyway. Yeah. A cookie. Right, cookie would be exactly what this is, yeah? If you wanted to crash down a cookie because you want to sprinkle it or make it simple, a cookie would be okay, right? Because it only gets crushed once. It's crushed once, right? Then it's stuck back together into cookie form. If you wanted to crush down that cookie, again, that's going to be okay. Bread, right? You want to take some bread and crush it down in small pieces and sprinkle it into your soup, okay? That would be okay as well. There is one exception over here. One exception, which we'll come to inside in a second. One exception of this is, anybody know? Something that grinds down, and then when it solidifies, it goes back to its original form. Mud. Dried mud is a problem. Mud will be problematic over there. Okay? If you have mud on your shoe, butts, right, on your shoe, and then it dries up, so you come to your shoe the next morning, grinding down that mud, you're like, wow, it was ground down when it got on my shoe, right? It didn't arrive with lumps, right? It was like ground down mud, but since when it dries up on your shoe, it goes back to the original state. Brushing it off like this onto the ground could well be problematic. It probably is, as we're going to see. Okay.
So you should clean your shoes?
What?
You should clean your shoes.
Well, if they're still moist, but yeah, if it happens when you're naturally walking, then it's fine. But to deliberately start to grind down and push it off like that is problematic. Yeah. Once it's dry, if it's like still a bit moist, it's not a problem. In most cases, it is. What else over here? How about sugar? Can you grind down sugar?
Oh, like this. Yeah.
So sugar cube, what would you say? Yeah, because sugar cube is ready to be ground down from its original sugar cane, and then put it into a cube form. That's a problem. Then it's not a problem. You can grind it down, put it in your coffee, let it dissolve. That's totally okay. Rock candy, even though it's cut down from bigger pieces into smaller pieces, crushing that down would be problematic.
What is that?
How is that different from a sugar cube?
Sugar cube is actually a piece of sugar that they've squished into a cube. It's like a cookie of the sugar world. You see, right? Really, isn't it? They've taken the sugar, they crushed it down, and they just packed it very, very neatly. That's going to be okay. How about salt?
I feel like that's a problem.
Well, it depends what form it's in. Original rock salt, crushing it down, you cannot do on Shabbat. If it's just lumped up together, right, because of moisture, then it's not a problem. And you can squish it down in order to separate it out.
What's the difference between the sugar and the salt?
There is no difference.
So then how come you could use...
You can take sugar cubes, and you can also, the equivalent in the salt world will be that lumps together inside the thing. That's going to be okay. But original rock candy or original sugar, which is still like in the rock form, and salt in its original form is going to be a problem. Which is why on Shabbat you cannot grind down pepper. You know those pepper mills? Right? You grind a fresh pepper. You cannot grind that on Shabbat. That is absolute tochein and is forbidden.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For those grinders, sometimes, like, if you just, like, go like this really hard,
Yeah.
then like some will come out. Is that the same?
It does? Why does it come out?
Because there's some at the bottom that just stays there.
That'll be okay. That'll be okay. But they're not meant for that. To start actually grinding it down using a grinder is going to be a problem. Okay? That's number 2. Number 3, miyad. Now miyad we use for borer. Now it applies here as well because the original grinding down that was done for a storage. You put it aside or put it away. You have no book?
I forgot it. I grabbed the wrong one. I have one that looks like it.
Everyone looks like it?
Okay, she's my roommate, so I'm just gonna get it.
Okay. So, you shall take notes. So, miyad means right away. Now, again, there's a dispute what right away means. Some say it means right for the meal. People are a little bit scared about that. For sure, you can eat the food, all right? I mean, your teeth grind down the food, that's for sure. Right? That's derech achila as well. But grinding down right before could be problematic, but we can use this when we have a certain question, and we're going to use the miyad for crushing certain things that we're not so sure about where they fall into the category. So we may have to use this, okay, like borer, and shinui. How was the grinding originally done? In a very specific way. But if I do it in an unusual way, kalachayad, I use some other methodology of doing it, then we could possibly use that on an item where it's a question where we're not allowed to. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. So we add that in, okay? We're going to throw that together with miyad, add that to something which we are questionably not allowed to crush, as opposed to something we're definitely allowed to crush, and we're going to use that as well. Okay? So those are our exceptions to Tochein. Oh, one more. You cannot use a special grinding implement, okay? Which used to be a pestle and mortar. Ever heard that before? Pestle. When I grew up, my grandmother had a pestle and mortar in the house. Wow, like a thing, like a big bell, and I used to like ring it the whole time, you know. Such an item, but not only that, right? Even a grinder or a what's it called? The grater. Thank you.
You're not allowed to use it like
No, no grater. That's
Wait,
a
like
special.
grate cheese.
Well, cheese we have to talk about. Is cheese considered to be gedule karka? Is that considered to be a natural item that comes out of the ground?
No.
Like carrots?
So probably not.
And
Carrots
it's
come out of the
like-
ground.
No, I know, but like, can you do that?
No, absolutely not.
That's not
What
the
do you mean?
plan.
100% it is.
Why?
Because don't just define tochein as making it into a powder. Anytime you make it duck into small pieces and it comes from the ground like a carrot, so grating a carrot or such vegetable would be problematic.
But wouldn't it be like
You're
a
not allowed to do
peeler,
it.
How it's like cut them and then.
No, peelers are okay. You mentioned the peeling thing last time, remember?
Well, what about the graters that are like they make longer pieces? It's not like the really tiny.
So that's a good question. Making long, thin strips could also be problematic over here. Right? They talk about it. Moshe's going to talk about that in a second. Well, I'm going to mention his idea in a second. But just the basic idea, it's not just talking powder, okay? It's talking about creating small pieces. Using a grater is a weekday implement that you cannot do. An egg slicer is okay, because an egg slicer is the equivalent of like 5 knives cutting at the same time. That you can use. But cutting small, and even eggs probably don't even fall in this category anyway, right? Some people include it because of that, right? Because the animal gets sustenance from the ground. But cutting down using a grater on Shabbat, B'loshum often.
So you're not allowed to chop your salad?
You can chop it, but you can't make it duck very small pieces on Shabbat.
How do you know?
That's the problem. We're not told. There's no real definition given.
So you don't need to be machmir about that?
So some people, well, you don't say that. Some people are very machmir about this. Some people are very machmir about this, yeah.
I've never quite understood like the issue with like pills.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
Hold on to your pills. We're gonna get, not literally, we're gonna get there in a second. All right, we'll see how that falls into it. Okay. So basically breaking down an item, not necessarily into fine powder, into small chetechot pieces is being proud. There is no definition of an amount that's given, right? Some say it depends on the item. Is it get more use the smaller it is? Some people say about vegetables, it's not so different, you know, from a bigger piece to a tiny piece, right? Both are going to have to be chewed down afterwards. So there are people who are lenient, okay, and there are some people who are more strict, right? Slicing vegetables with thin strips. So it says the Rav Moshe Feinstein, with respect to food, he says Tochein is when it's considered a significant and effective improvement only when the food is chopped and reduced to small particles, okay, and makes it significantly easier to eat. That already is the status. It's like a common sense thing, okay? If you are going to rely upon a lenient opinion and cut into small pieces, what you want to do is go miyad, right before the meal. Right? You want to at least attach that to it. So if you are going to make it to tiny pieces Friday night for Shabbos day is not okay. Shabbos morning, Shabbos afternoon, no. Miyad is going to help you over here. Okay? That's going to help you if you make it into very small pieces. Again, some people are very, very careful not to do it at all. Okay, how about fruit? Mashing fruit. Okay? How is that going to impact us? So some say some fruit is so mashed already, yeah, that it's not really considered to be grinding down. Like cooked vegetables, like a cooked potato, it's already so squishy and mushy that by making smaller pieces, it's not really problematic. So that you can be lenient. So some people are careful and they will do it miyad beforehand and they'll do it with a shinui. So if they're mashing up a banana for a baby, for example, okay, so they're like, well, first of all, it's squishy anyway, but the baby can't eat it squishy. You have to break down even more. So I'm going to do it miyad right before I feed the baby. I'm going to squish it down, and I'm going to throw in a shinui as well. I'm going to use I'm going to use the handle of a spoon people use, right, or the handle of a fork in order to squash it down. Okay, the Chazon Ish was very strict, and he said that any mashing, right, is a form of tochein. So there are people who are strict with this. But if you throw the miyad and the shinui and it's a squishy vegetable anyway, like an avocado or something, then it's going to be lesser of a problem. Okay? Okay.
So it's okay to make
Yeah.
guacamole?
Yeah. Yeah. And even egg salad. Okay? Some people are careful not to make the pieces too small.
How would you make avocado, like guacamole, or a shinui? Like, what would you do?
You probably don't have to. It's probably soft enough, the avocado, that's not a problem. So you don't have to worry about it. Okay? So basically, in the end, we say that cheese and meat and eggs are exempt from the malach of tochein. However, they can be chopped or ground on Shabbos, okay, which we do. However, and by the way, some people are even strict that and Hasidim I've been to Hasidim when I was a Bach, I used to go to a Hasidic family. They used to make, for a number of reasons actually, we're going to get to later on, egg salad at the table on Shabbos. At the Shabbos table, they would literally start peeling the eggs, put it into a bowl, adding the oil and the mayonnaise and salt at the end, you'll see why later on, right? And they started to mish it all up and do it at the table. That's the minhag. I wouldn't do it in the kitchen.
Is it miyad?
Yeah. Oh, you don't get more miyad than that, right? Right, mamash at the table. Well, actually you do by eating it, right? But that was their thing.
So you can't do anything miyad?
Yeah, yeah. For those items, yeah, but we just don't use grating implement. A grater, we don't use. Egg slicer, okay, but an implement for it, we don't do.
But like you can cut something into 5 pieces miyad.
No, not always. Not always, right? Some things which are definite, like a carrot, for example, right? Make it tiny pieces, and miyad isn't always going to help. Some say, okay, vegetables are not so, the difference is not so big. You could eat it before and eat it once it's small anyway. There are people who are lenient with it, and they will use miyad as well. You should definitely use miyad.
And what's considered small?
I think no one's got an exact definition of it. It's quite tricky. It's quite tricky. Yeah.
Could you cut your vegetables before Shabbos?
Oh yeah, well, of course you can. Oh, then yeah. The question is doing the actual cutting itself on Shabbos. Oh, before Shabbos, you can cook the meat before Shabbos.
Right.
The whole question is on Shabbos itself. Okay. All right.
So basically you can chop everything with the shino and miyad?
It's hard for me to say that. It's hard for me to say that. Some people are strict and some people are lenient. You have to see what your LOR says about it.
And so what do you say about that?
So, miyad, vegetables. My wife is lenient. Local Orthodox rabbi, LOR. LOL, not LOL. That's when you hear the answer. Then it goes from LOR to LOL. Yeah.
So, when would it be? Like, when can you use miyat? Is there rules of when you can use that, or it's just like?
We're saying if you are in a situation where it's not so clear, it's forbidden, right? For example, you can't start grinding pepper granules down right before the meal. It's not going to work. Miyad is, that's a definite. Some things are less problematic. For example, chopping up vegetables. Some say the vegetables, once they're very, very small, it's kind of like the same as when they're big, okay? Or I'm not so sure. So when you're cutting vegetables anyway, right, do it miyad. Do it miyad. Do it right before the meal, okay? For that meal that's coming up, okay? And many people say cooking, like smashing a cooked potato, we said is okay because it's softened by the cooking. We did that. We did that. We did that. We did that. Time frame of miyad we did already, and shina we did as well. Okay, that's good.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. If a non-food grinds it for you, is that okay? Like, let's say the pepper.
Probably.
And then if somebody does it, let's say you're at somebody's fish bar and you see them grind the pepper, does that make it non-kosher?
Wow. It's a good question. Is it such an integral part of the meal they seem to do it? You probably be lenient right before the meal. Probably be lenient right before the meal. I think. I'll double check into that. Because it's like an extra thing, it's like an extra thing itself. It's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah.
So making egg salad, it's okay to mash it up?
Yes, eggs are right. Eggs are not considered. Some people consider it, but we don't consider gedulei hakaka. In fact, you can smash up eggs. People make egg salad. Some people are even careful with that, not to make it into small pieces. They leave it a little bit chunky. That's for other reasons as well, called gibble, creating a mixture. Right, we'll see later on. Yeah. Yeah. That'll be the same. Okay. So now we're going to do what seems like a completely different topic, and we'll see why it's connected. So let's have a look on page 39 at a gezerah that is connected to the malacha of Tochein. So what we're going to discuss now is basically we're going to do a general summary of the malacha of the gezerah of shchikat zmanim, which is grinding down herbs in order to make medicine. And the gezerah that goes with it, which we're going to see, in some situations, depending on the person, depending on their level of sickness, taking medication on Shabbos, which in many cases is going to be forbidden. Let's figure out when it's forbidden, why it's forbidden, how it's forbidden, but let's begin with the general concept of Pikuach Nefesh. So the Torah tells us, we're on page 39, the Torah tells us that the mitzvahs should be done, and in order to do the mitzvot, we have to be alive. So Hashem wants us to live, which means in most cases, if there is a choice between life and death and a certain aveira happening, we choose life. As the Torah says, V'chai behem, Hashem wants us to live. There is no greater mitzvah than living. Okay? So a general rule in halachic thought, in majority of cases, is that you're entitled to do an aveira in order to save a life. For example, if a person is sick and not necessarily about to die, all right, but in a situation where they are sick, which could lead to bad consequences, you're allowed to be mechalel Shabbos for that person. For example, if a woman goes into labor, God bless you, on Shabbat, you don't say to her, come on, let's have Dollar in 5 hours. Can't you wait? Right? You're allowed to be mechal Shabbos to get that lady to the hospital. If you are able, in the same way, to get to that destination without being mechal Shabbos, e.g., preparing a taxi and calling a taxi to come take that person, then that's fine. That's better. But that's if all things are equal. But if you're in doubt, a woman who is in active labor is considered to be sakanat nefashot. It's a life-threatening situation, although many women don't die, Baruch Hashem, nowadays in childbirth. We give it the same status. And you're allowed to save a life. Okay? Life is precious for us. And Mechal Shabbos moves away. Chil Shabbos moves away. As I had to do. Right? Two of my children inconveniently had the chutzpah of trying to be born on Shabbos. And so we happened to have a non-Jewish person who was my wife's doula. We called her up. First time she drove us. And the second time I think we got a taxi, I remember. Right? But we went to the hospital and had Mechal Shabbos. Now, it's direct and what's ever needed. You can't turn on the stereo on the way down. Okay? That's not effective. It's whatever's needed to be done for the situation in order to transport the person to the hospital. Okay?
It's good to ask for the taxi driver to not to
To what?
turn off the radio if it's already turned on.
You can probably do it.
You can do it.
Probably with a remez, yeah. If it's really affecting the person, like making them feel worse, then you probably can. Yeah. Yeah.
What if it's something that's like ongoing? It's not pregnancy and someone's giving birth, but it's like diabetes, for example. You can go through Shabbat without with eating lettuce leaves and not, breaking Shabbat.
Okay, we're going to come to medication in a second, and when it's allowed, when it's not allowed, and what circumstances. Let's just work up Pikuach Nefesh, then we get to medications because there's a lot on this. We'll do as much as we can today. So the general concept is v'chai behem. Torah says we want people to live by them. A person who is deathly ill must eat on Yom Kippur. Okay? One of my Rebbeim, he's a posek, he was approached by a lady who asked, she had a very unusual question, but it was related to, can she fast the day before Yom Kippur as well? Right? And you could see that, and he basically figured out through conversation, this woman was anorexic, okay? And not eating was, at this point, a sakana for her. She said she was able to disguise it very well with her clothing. But he said very clearly, you mechuyev to eat. You're chayev to eat. You must eat on Yom Kippur. Now, when we start eating, the various shiurim, less than a certain amount, he actually said you can eat normally. Right? It's kind of a shal. Why? Yom Kippur. Shua Yom Kippur, Shabbat, Shabbaton. Right? And Torah says, v'chai behem. And if you don't eat, you put yourself in a deadly situation. It's not acceptable. You have to eat. Okay? Jewish soldiers are allowed to drive flying Shabbos in order to rescue hostages. Right? They're in a life-threatening situation. We don't put off holding. Right? You hear these stories, Rahman Aslan, in Brooklyn or somewhere else, of kids going missing. Right? So people go in cars, start looking for them. There was a situation recently in Pesach, which didn't end well. Right? All these rules are pushed away in order to find this person. We get in cars and we drive around and we talk on the phone and do what we need to do in order to do it. It's not convenient to always have non-Jews do all the stuff for us. Okay? Hatzalah exists because we want to get the person to the hospital as quickly as possible. Okay? Now, there's a non-Jewish hospital service. What can we rely upon them? And the answer is we can, but Hatzalah has proven itself to get there beforehand. And in many conditions that we know about, every second counts. So the whole concept of Hatzalah, I believe, came around because, although it's a Jew being Mechal Shabbos and there's non-Jews do it, because they get the person there quicker. They get the person there quicker. The question comes around, which most communities I've discovered, except NYC, allow it. In the Hasidic world, they're more strict with this, is when the person actually does go and take the person to hospital, are they them personally allowed to return home? And the emergency is over. Okay, that solid driver, we know, is that he gets the phone call and off he goes and he drives. Right? My neighbor is a tzaddik who is every Shabbos see him running out, middle of the night. Right? He even called me once for a certain young lady who was had mental issues actually. And by the way, you consider mental issues to be issues as well, not just physical.
What?
Mental issues, we consider them to be sakana fashot as well. It's Pikuach Nefesh. If a person is mentally unstable and they need medication, they need medical help, we're like, oh, but physically they're fine, but mentally we consider it to be the same, and that person gets taken to the hospital. It's their mental.
But it's not like I understand that they need to take medicine, but it's not like an ongoing disease. It didn't just happen today.
So what?
So why do they need a doctor?
Even so, if it's an ongoing disease physically, right? We also say that person can go if they need to take to the hospital. It doesn't have to be ongoing. If on Shabbat the determination is made, right, which is made pretty easily, by the way. We don't ask, hello, yes, are you Jewish? How bad is it? They go. We don't take chances, and we're Machal Shabbat. They go. Mental or physical. So there was one girl who was saying, I'm going to kill myself. Like, well, kill yourself, try to do it and then we'll see. No. So he came to my house in the middle of the night, he picked me up, it wasn't Shabbat. Right? I went to the hospital. And by the way, just the hospital ride was nauseating. Because he wanted me to speak to her a little bit, and she had problems and questions and this kind of stuff. So he just, there was psychiatrists and stuff as well, but she had certain other things as well, so he took me with. So once you've gone to the emergency itself, now you're after the emergency, the Hatzalah. So how come they're allowed to go home? The emergency is over. They're in the hospital. They drop them off. Why are they allowed to go home? So there's two possible reasons. One is because if we leave them there all Shabbat, no one's going to join Hatzalah, right? Because what? This is going to be my Shabbos. One little emergency Friday night, and now I've got to forget about it. So we say you'll have to return them home. Okay. The other answer is that there could be another emergency they have to attend to. Nachon? So if they're stuck in a hospital and they're far away, it could be like 3-4 miles to the hospital, right? Rather than being a few streets over, then they won't be able to retreat yet the next thing, and they're without their car, whatever it is, So that'd be a problem as well. So for that, they're allowed to go home. In most communities, they allow the Hatzalah person to go home themselves, as in drive home themselves. Monsey, there's one city I know about because I live in it. You try to get a non-Jew to do it for you. So there's 2 non-Jews on staff, and they will be there to drive the. And there's actually, they're right next to, like a few minutes from me, there's a Hatzalah station. There's a non-Jew sleeps there over the Shabbat, and he's the driver. All right, and you basically have 2 drivers. One drives him home, and one helps him, drive back. Yeah.
We have a family friend who works for Hatzalah, and he always, occasionally he'll get calls on Shabbos, but he always says, Motzei Shabbos is when, so many calls come in from people who, should have gone to the hospital over
on Shabbos, yeah. Shabbos is when everyone's at home, and that's when accidents happen. My son loves to get injured on Shabbos. He's just obsessed with it. We had guests for Shabbos once, and I forget this, in my old house, and they arrived, and my son walks into the front door, and they've arrived, the guests. A whole bunch of students had turned up at my house with a massive gash on his forehead, blood oozing out of it. So we called my friend. He came to check it out. My friend Picky. He's like, hospital. Right? This could be, it's a young child. He's got a cut on him. Get infected. Take him to the hospital. Question is whether you can stitch on Shabbos or not. That's actually an interesting question. It has to do stitching on Shabbos. Some doctors will not do stitching on Shabbos, right? Because they can wait 24 hours. It'll close within 24 hours. So wherever you are on Shabbos, or after Shabbos, you can do it. That's a side point. We had to get into Hatzalah anyway, see what's going on with him. Okay, so we took him there. Some do, but some don't. So we took him there, and I'm at home, and I had to serve all this with myself. I don't know where anything is. Complete nightmare, right? But that's the situation.
But is it more of a halachic issue that these Jews are not necessarily taking
It's
health
terrible.
advice?
No, absolutely, it's a halachic issue. The Torah says, "V'chai ben," you have to take the kid. If there's a question over here, you take. You err on the side of caution, right? Because you're right. Maybe 99% of the cases are okay, but that 1% could end with a serious thing, right? You err on the side of caution and you go. Hatzalah get called, they go. They don't sit on the phone for 20 minutes trying to figure out what the situation is. You call, and any Hatzalah guy, and they love it, by the way, these guys. And I love getting their cars, right? They say, call us.
You called Hatzalah?
Yeah, well, I got a bunch of times.
No, you didn't drive him to the hospital? Or you're not allowed?
No, Hatzalah took him to the hospital. I had one recently. I don't know why. Oh yeah, one of my daughters had a flare-up. She had a she actually put we found out later, some makeup on. They reacted badly with her, and she started to get puffy eyes. You ever have that before? Right? So we called Hatzalah, and we said, listen. They always say the same thing. We don't think it's an emergency. As soon as I hear that, they're like, it's an emergency. Right? And I think it's okay, but she's like swollen eyes. He's like, it could be, what's it called? It could be that the throat starts, it could be like an hour later, the throat starts to swell as well, becomes sakana. They don't wait for that to happen. They heard she's like swelling it, came straight over, took her straight to the hospital. Right? So there's no mitzvah to wait to figure out what it is. It says, v'chai behem, that you're allowed to do it, and you go and do it. Treating it, is question. Stitching, can it wait till afterwards? Once you see it's not an emergency situation, it has to be removed. Then the people say, don't stitch on Shabbos.
it better though, like to call like an ambulance and not Hatzalah? Because
So
they're
the-
like,
So the halacha is very clear, right? The postman says no.
right?
Hatzalah because it comes quicker.
Oh, that's why.
That's why. Every second counts in an emergency. That's why Hatzalah exists. About the same with fire as well. They have a fire, a voluntary fire thing. There's a bunch of Jews in the fire thing. And so if it arrives quicker, because fire can spread quickly, they're allowed to do this as well. But if you're in a town and it's known that the non-Jew gets there at the same time that as a Jewish one, I think it'd be a question to even use them.
Hatzalah?
Right, but it never happens.
Right.
Because maybe a one-off thing, but on a general basis, they're always going to get quicker. Right? Literally within like 60 seconds, 90 seconds, because they're in your community. They're right there. There's a whole bunch of them. Right? And they sit on Shabbos, right? With my friend Pinky is a frum guy. Right? He ain't messing around. He sits with his walkie-talkie, up, down, walk around, up, down, up, down, up, down. Right? You're being Machal Shabbat. Right? And they do that. And that's the mitzvah.
But what if like seconds don't matter? Like if you're going for a broken arm or stitches, like.
We don't know. Until you have that examined, you don't know what's happened.
But you do know, like a broken arm, like.
How do you know? How do you know what it is?
Like a broken arm is never.
It's internal. How are you going to know?
You just know.
How do you know? How do you know the child's not having a shock, or a shock, or being affected by it? Let's say a bee stings on someone, young baby, right? They're in pain, but how do you know it's not going to... You're right. In most cases, it may be right, but that one exception to that case, we are careful about.
Because of that one exception, like everything.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Now, if that solid guy says, you know, I'm able to just tape it up for you right now with a splint, and we'll wait till after Shabbat, I don't see it, but you call that solid.
What if, are you allowed to go home? Like, you were brought to the hospital.
Yes.
Are you allowed to go home?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah?
Happened to me recently. I got in the back of the ambulance, and...
Not in the ambulance. Like, they call you a cab. Like, it's
Ca-
not
get,
quick
get,
enough.
get, it's fine.
It's fine.
It's definitely, yeah. Yeah. You're not expected to spend the rest of Shabbos. Other people are strict with it, probably, but a non-Jew driving is definitely okay. I mean, that's much, much better, you know?
Right.
Wait, but if you, I mean, if she's getting checked, it means
You go with, you don't put the child by themselves. You can have someone go with them, and they don't get trapped in the hospital for Shabbos.
Right, so like I was in the hospital with one of my friends over Rosh Hashanah in Israel, and then we ended up taking a cab back because the rabbi told us.
That'll be the reason why you're going to have entitled to go back. Or people will be too scared to go to the hospital on the fear I'm going to spend the rest of Shabbos in the hospital. It's the same concept. They don't allow people to do that, then they're going to call in the first place. Is it bad enough that I want to spend the rest of my Shabbos in hospital? It's craziness. And in most cases you may be okay, but in many cases you're not. Yeah.
Yeah, my father one time, he's a doctor, he had to drive, it was Friday night dinner, and he got a call, he was paid, he was on call at Shabbos, and I remember he drove to the hospital, but then he called, he knew he was going to be on call on Shabbos, so he asked the rabbi what he should do if he has to go in, he said he has to walk back. So he walked.
Maybe it's a walkable distance. We have a doctor, she comes, takes on my kids, and she will always walk. Right? If it's not an emergency, she said something, she's I get a prescription from the thing, you have to take this medication, right? She will walk to the Rite Aid, which is opposite me, and she walks, and she says, fine, it's 2 blocks, and she will walk, she won't drive to the Rite Aid.
No, not that, but like, he drove into the hospital for the emergency, took care of it, and then he had to walk back. He didn't get home until Shabbos then, so like Shabbos afternoon, he walked back.
Wow.
No, he stayed overnight in the hospital, and then.
He did that?
Yeah, and then he walked back Shabbos afternoon, because that's what rabbi said you should do. It's not an emergency to get back. And,
But maybe he's needed for other calls.
I don't know, maybe.
I know, yeah, whatever your LOR does. I'm just giving you the outlines over here. I can't.
It could be he wasn't needed. It could be. Maybe the shift ended and there was someone else.
I don't know.
But that's how to drive back when you're dead.
His rabbi said no. That was that. He took up a suck. And you know what? Get a good night's sleep in the hospital. It was quiet over there. No kids to annoy you. Not a bad place. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What if you have a surgery on a Friday night and you're discharged like Shabbos afternoon? Do you leave? Or should you leave?
Yeah, if you have to get out, you get a non-Jew to take you. I believe so, yeah. Okay. So let's have a look at some more definitions of Pikuach Nefesh. Saving someone's physical, spiritual life. even in a case of doubt, whether it's questionable whether they're in mortal danger, doubtful whether your efforts will be successful. You know, are they going to die anyway? This is important. You're allowed to increase a person's life. Right? Let's say you know, for example, that, and by the way, this person, you know, could be like totally out of it. And you know they're going to die in a day or so, even a few hours. You're entitled to every second of life in this world is precious. If you know a person on life support, you can do Machal Shabbos to keep this person alive a little bit longer. Oh, but they can't do any mitzvah, they're on life support, they're nothing to do with it. Extending life, even life which is not living per se, you know, but is in a coma or something, that life is entitled to be, every moment of life in this world is a tikkun. Not because they can do more good deeds afterwards. Life itself. Even saving a fetus in distress. Right? You can somehow figure out the mother's not going to be. We still, a senile person, a person goes missing. Right? Let him walk around another 10 hours. No, you go into a car and you go find them. Right? Prolonging a dying person's life. Even preventing Pikuach Nefesh. Now, these are big Talmudic discussions with Rishonim Acharonim. And I'm not a major expert in them. I've been to a number of shiurim on them. But if you think that person's going to end up in a Pikuach Nefesh situation, you'll have to Mechal Shabbos for that person. Okay? Some say even a spiritual life. Although I've seen dissenting opinions. Right? If you know, for example, that, I don't know, the priest is going to come as he used to be and kidnap kids to, you know, take them to the church, but they're going to be okay physically. Can I be Mechal Shabbos to go save them? Some say, yeah, even a spiritual life. Right? They're going to be okay physically. Right? They're just going to be, you know, taken away from their religion. That's also. Avodah Zarah, yeah. Yeah.
What about today? Like, could you give an example?
It's tricky. I'm not a posek, but today. There's an organization in Eretz Yisrael, and they have, I forgot the name of it, where Israeli women are taken, seduced in many cases, by Palestinians and by Arabs.
What?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of this going on in Eretz Yisrael, and they marry with them, and they get stuck in their communities, they can't get out. Sometimes it's voluntary as well. Many people, as an organization, what's it called? Ezra, what's it called? No.
I think it's
Yeah. Lava.
That's the one? Doesn't sound familiar to me. Okay, Google it.
No, that's what it's called.
Well, okay, there's only one person Googling, okay? I didn't need 45 Googlers. In that situation, I believe the Pesach over there is they will go in on Shabbat in order to get these women out. Right?
No, but that's like kind of. That's kind of.
What?
I mean, I agree, but if they do it voluntarily,
and you're able to get them out, still a problem. You don't say, oh, it's their fault.
It's their fault.
So what? If a person voluntarily walks off a bridge into the water, right, they're drowning, well, you did voluntarily, so you have to go in and save them.
Two people went voluntarily together. We don't do anything about that.
No, but a lot of women.
If you're able to go get them out, you get them out.
That's their problem.
And you don't say that. You don't say that. You can't say it's their problem. They decided to do it. If you think you'll be successful, even partially, you think you'll be successful in saving them, you machal Shabbat.
That's like against the law.
Which law?
The Israeli law.
To what?
It's like kidnap them.
No, a lot of women.
I'm missing it. Which part is against the law? Taking them in the first place,
No.
or returning them?
Returning them if they want to stay there.
Aha. If they want to stay there, well, you can do. Many cases they want to get out, and they send messages they want to get out.
That's something else.
I believe that's what we're talking
Shabbat.
about. Because that's when they're cutting away till sun. If that's when you find, that's when it happens.
A lot of these women are like being like beat up and abused, and that's why they're like or their kids are, and that's why they're reaching out for help.
There's a whole movie, a whole fundraising movie I saw on it.
It's called Yad La'achim.
Yad La'achim. That's the one. Thank you. Oh, I feel much better now. Yes. Okay. After a person has done this to save a life, we consider it to be a mitzvah. They don't have to do it to shuvah. That Tzollah guy doesn't go Moshe Shabbos and start, you know, chatay p'shak. They did a mitzvah. There's no teshuvah for it. Right? It's a mitzvah, and they're entitled to do it. Okay. In a situation, by the way, I think I mentioned this before, but this is halacha. If you're in a room with all Jews and there's a rabbi there, and the rest of them are chiluni legamrei, totally secular Jews, and someone needs to call Hatzalah, the halacha is the rabbi does it. To show that this is a mitzvah and we consider life to be very important. Whatever. He's on his phone anyway, let him call. You don't do that. It becomes a principle, and you make the call, and the rabbi or the frumest person there makes the phone call themselves. Right? Naturally, you're like, I don't want to do it. Whatever. They're on the phone anyway. No, they do it.
But you know that
They do it.
on Yom Kippur something happened to me, so I used my phone. So someone like was an emergency, and like the religious, some like religious guy came to me. Can you call 911?
That's what you said?
I called, but like,
Emergency was who? To you or to someone else?
no, to someone else. But
Wow.
like he asked me to call.
It's a mistake. He should have called himself. Unless it wasn't his phone. 1 second. Unless,
No,
you know.
but there was what do you say, like public phone?
Yeah.
And it was a while ago.
Siburi, there was a.
Yeah. I called.
It says mitzvah. Okay.
I did it,
If
you know.
it's a smaller item, if the doctor, then you get a non-Jew to do it. Okay. Many people will see later when it comes to pregnancy, they will set up before in many communities. They'll call the taxi service before and says, by the way, I'm going to end up calling you. Please come. There'll be an envelope with money in it, or I'll pay you after Shabbat that you know this is going on. And they come, you pair money in an envelope, and there it is. They come, they take the stuff out, and they do the driving for you. If all things are equally up to the non-Jew, do that, and that's where they recommend it. Okay, so a non-Jewish driver to the hospital is better if all other things are equal. If there's any form of delay by doing it that way, then it's an avera.
What? Sorry?
If there's any form of delay by using a non-Jew, then it's an avera. I think the delay is going to hurt. Look, go to page 40. One must be very careful not to cause any delay that may endanger the victim's life. Performing actions for a non-Jew with a shinoi, one should advise the person he's only doing so in a particular case. Like we said, my friend he gets a call, so he calls back. He uses his knuckle rather than his finger. The shinoi, right, of using his knuckle is the same amount of speed as using his fingers. He usually really does it, so it's fine. Right? He just brings it down a notch. Yeah.
If a lady goes into labor, can like the family come with?
Those people who are needed are allowed to go with for emotional support. Okay? Yeah, she doesn't have to go by herself. Whoever she needs for emotional support can come with.
But if you're 20
Yeah.
and you fall and you break your leg,
Yeah.
are you allowed to take someone with you?
Yes.
You don't need that much emotional support. Just a leg.
What? But that's pain.
You can do it.
Mommy, I was giving you one. How'd you get there?
Guys, calm down. It's just a comment.
Welcome to Jewish education. You make one comment and everyone's on your case like that.
Done.
It's all over.
What about guns in the base? On Shabbat.
Huh?
Like guns.
You what?
That's Pikuach Nefesh.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. No problem. The army operates and they drive around. They have to do things to prevent it. Preventing Pikuach Nefesh, right? They think an attack's coming. They better get on the border.
Yeah, but even if like nothing ever happened, or like.
What do you know nothing ever happened? You have the Yom Kippur War.
No,
You know,
but
they
like
happen.
I'm saying, like, you know, basic training, like, you know, when you guard, I don't know.
So, okay, that's up to you. The Rabbanut have this under control. They're Israel. They make
no,
sucked
like
in.
their excuse was like, no, Pikuach Nefesh, you can use it now. So that's my question.
It's a bit tricky. Doing exercises where you know you can do it, it doesn't need to be done, but not actually like patrolling.
No, patrolling, yeah.
Patrolling's fine. Patrolling, you have to defend the borders.
Inside the base.
Well, there's a reason why you patrol. Are you patrolling on a Monday inside the base?
Yeah.
Why are you patrolling on Monday inside the base?
To train.
Oh, so the patrolling is not patrolling then. Patrolling is you're
Yes,
stopping.
but it's like, come on, like we're 2 weeks in the army, we're not gonna shoot anymore. They're not gonna let us.
I hope you are. Sometimes to attack you. If you've got a gun, you're gonna shoot someone.
2 weeks in the army.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen. Like
Also, you play tennis in the army. What's that got to do with it? I don't understand. You don't know.
basic training.
Oh, basic training. Basic tennis training. You had to do.
No, what? What are you talking about?
You did real training.
M16, the long ones.
Okay. 1 second. Let me just finish up. Pikuach Nefesh. 1 second. So, let me just finish up Pikuach Nefesh and we'll do medication next class. That's so much more, but I'll do a little bit over here. Here, if after arriving at the hospital, it is discovered, let's say a woman goes into, she gets, what's the false labor called? Haxton Bricks? Is that what it's called? What's it called? Braxton Hicks, that's it. Braxton Hicks. Remember that. And she goes to the hospital. She's allowed to go to the hospital, whatever. She thinks it's real. Turns out, like, nah, you're going to have that 2 weeks. She can go back home, but she's using a non-Jewish driver to take her back home after that. Okay? A non-Jewish taxi, and you defer the payments after Shabbos. Okay? Or he can take the money himself when he arrives at the place. So the money's inside there, please take it out. Yeah. One second. Let me just finish this off. Even if it's probable Pikuach Nefesh, like high raised temperatures, we are careful with it. Oh, there's so much more. Oh, yikes. Yeah.
If you're in Israel and you have to go to the hospital in that case that you just said, there are a lot of Jews that don't keep Shabbat in Israel.
You can't use. You cannot use a Jew to do it for you in that situation.
No, I'm saying, how do you know? Are you supposed to go and be like, are you taxi driver?
It's a known thing. Yes and yes. Yes, so a non-Jewish taxi driver. Yeah. Okay, let's stop over there because my brain is full and I haven't prepared enough of the medication stuff. There's a lot of the medication stuff. So we'll do that, God willing, on Tuesday. Shabbat Shalom. The what? Yeah, a week before.